are coming to your city. Gonna play our guitars and sing you a country song. We'll all be flying higher than a jetliner. And if you want a little bang in your yin-yang, come along.
Come on along and welcome aboard Indiana Sports Beat, of course, coming to you from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios on this Wednesday. It's 12th of August. We are midway through the week, and nothing big happening, just the cancellation of all Big Ten fall sports. The world's coming crashing to an end. Fortunately, we have Dustin DePerrick joining us today as well. Dustin, how are you, sir?
Hanging in there considering the world is crashing down, but otherwise.
That's exactly what it feels like, man. It's like, oh, no, come on, because 5 months ago, it didn't seem like it could get any worse. When you cancel the NCAA men's basketball tournament, that's about as bad as it gets.
Right. Yeah, no.
And we go through months and months of this, and now we get to this point, boom, and now football. Crazy.
Yeah. No, unbelievable. And obviously, when you cancel the NCAA tournament, when you make a move that big, you think, okay, that's going to be the last one. You obviously they put everything on hold, and you're thinking, okay, well, between March and September, we got to get this figured out. We've just in our lifetime, we've never had stuff on hold that long or anywhere near close to that long. We've never had something that big get canceled. And you knew at the time that it was, obviously this was a big deal if you're talking about the NCAA deciding that we're going to leave all that money on the table. That's a huge amount of money, and you're like, okay, this has to be a massive amount of liability for you to be afraid to play the NCAA tournament. And you're thinking, okay, well, this has to get better by now. And just the fact that, it got better and then it didn't. And obviously there's just too many unanswered things, too many things to still be worried about, obviously, that led to this decision. And now, obviously, you can disagree with what the Big Ten is doing and what the Pac-12 is doing, because the ACC and the SEC certainly seem to, and maybe the Big 12 does as well. But it is just still incredible to think, man, how long this has gone on. And again, you think back to March 11th. I'll never forget just being in Madison Square Garden on the night of March 10th, basically as the NCAA gets suspended, as everybody decides that they're going to have to play basketball games without crowds, and the NCAA tournament is sort of in limbo, and you're thinking, man, this is not going to be normal for a while. But just to think that 5 months later, you're still talking about not playing a college football season is just incredible to think of just how long this has gone and where things stand right now.
Yeah, and going back to that, it was such a shock back in March when it happened, and I can still remember the shock because I can still feel it. But this is not as shocking, I guess, because we've been desensitized a little bit. But this sucks because we've been through it for months and months now, and now we know that we've got months and months to look forward to with this big blow. But what makes it worse is half's doing it, half's not doing it. Then you got people that are, well, why do they get to do it? And Nebraska kind of feeling the same way, a member of the Big Ten. This was no way a unanimous decision in the Big Ten, because there were several schools that wanted to play football, several coaches that came out in support of the players. Tom Allen was one of those, Jim Harbaugh, and they were using numbers behind. But at the end of the day, they make an overall decision. And you can't blame them. The Feeney situation in Indiana, there's no way that didn't play into this. It absolutely has to, because that's a new concern that has popped up, and it's a pretty severe, substantial concern.
Yeah, no, definitely. I was actually surprised watching the Kevin Warren interview on the Big Ten Network that Dave Revson had to bring up the word myocarditis, because that does seem like something that has really changed the tide over the last week and a half, going back to when everybody released all of their conference-only schedules, is that you start to sort of hear this rumbling about, well, you're seeing this, people who have had it showing myocarditis, and that's a, condition that has led to the deaths of athletes on the floor. And that's probably the most terrifying thing that you can think of as a college administrator, a president, a commissioner, whatever it is the idea of an athlete dying on the field or on the floor because of a heart condition. Again, we have seen it happen, and with Hank Gathers, I don't think Reggie Lewis died on the floor, but just again, perfectly otherwise healthy humans, just having I don't know if it's a heart attack or what you would exactly call it, but basically this condition, the heart stops and that's it. And that I think is the biggest thing that they're terrified of is, if somebody gets COVID, comes through it on the other side, starts testing negative, but because of, the virus, they have myocarditis, and then that flares up and, leads to a guy, dying on the field. That's what terrifies them. And if there's a lot of people that would pick it up, if a lot of people would get a lot of cases and it's not immediately diagnosed or whatever, I think that's something that obviously moved them to say, okay, there's more to this that we still don't know. And that's obviously the biggest thing is that, people that are saying, well, play on are looking at, mortality rates, how many people got it versus how many people actually died. What are the chances, especially for healthy people? Obviously, people that are older or have comorbidities have been dying at a high rate. People that are younger aren't. But if you get something like this and then you continue to put stress on your body like athletes do, you can have this issue. So if you're a commissioner, you still feel like you don't have enough answers, that makes a difference. And obviously athletes do want to play. And then we come into this whole concept of amateurism, being an issue of, okay, can you ask them to go into a bubble when you can't do it, when you can do it for professional athletes? Can you do that for college athletes? At a certain point, can you do that if you're not paying them? Is that even fair, basically? So you get into a whole bunch of issues there, and you look at it and say, okay, well, all of these aren't resolved. Even if you decided, okay, yeah, that would be the right thing to do was turn them into employees. You can't turn them into employees in a week. That is something that's going to take an entire overhaul of the system to get it done, even if you believe it should. So obviously I think I see where President Warren was coming from, but obviously I also see where everybody else is, because they're saying, if you do you have any better chance of not getting it if you're playing football? Basically, like, if you're in a structured system, if you're showing up and getting tested every day, aren't you better off than if you go back to your house and whatever your town is, where you don't have that level of structure and you don't have that level of discipline? Isn't it more likely that you're going to catch it that way? And it probably is, but the difference is if you go catch it in your hometown, your college president isn't liable for you. And that's the biggest issue. And again, is liability is always going to be a concern here, because if you can sue, and you will, if you get, health insurance bills that are that big, then, ultimately that is a concern that college administrators have to have. And obviously that's what's driving the decision here.
Yeah. You understand. I mean, there's no way you can take on that kind of what you talked about earlier. We've seen Hank Gathers. We've seen throughout the years people die on the field, on the floor, on the court, whatever. But it turns out, he had a large heart. It's always something you didn't know about. It was
right.
Well, this is a known thing, so they cannot. No way can they knowingly put this risk out there. And I get it. I mean, I've got a daughter that's going to be a senior in high school. That she's going to miss a soccer season, their last year. But is it worth the risk? Nah, not when you start throwing this thing in there. It's just something that's uncontrollable. This is a lifetime. And even if you get by it, it can leave problems for you. So it's it sucks. There's just no way to say it. It freaking sucks. And until we get a vaccine, it's not worth the risk for people. And I get it. Although there's the argument that these athletes are safer in this situation because they've gone to so many links and there's so many protocols in place and so many safety procedures in place that they're safer being a part of the football programs than they are not. And we've seen that. And then there's the argument that you've got students coming back on campus. Well, how do you do that and not be able to play sports? So,
and the question is that even going to happen? Because, I mean, you're really seeing, obviously, local school districts, high schools, middle schools, elementary schools are starting to open up and then closing right back down. You're having a situation where you go to school for a week, you get a couple positive tests, and then you're going right back into e-learning again. Will that probably happen at universities? Yes. If it's happening, if that's what's happening at high schools, that's what will happen at universities too. You already have a certain number of those that are already e-learning only, and then a lot more will be after they come to class for a week. If they get an outbreak, they're going to be like, no, you know what, go back to your dorms, take your classes online. So the idea that, okay, well, they're definitely going to be all on campus. No, they're not. But the issue is, if they're on campus, even if they're not going to class, even if they're just staying in their dorms, you have issues there because these kids think kids think they're invisible. When you're 22, when you're 21, when you're 18, you think you're invincible. level. So you have parties, you have everybody get together and you're like, well, you've been quarantining this whole time. If all of us have been quarantined this whole time, we'll get together and have a keg party and we'll be fine. That's obviously not working out so well for a lot of people. A couple of kids from Louisville are, suspended because they threw a party and got a whole bunch of people infected. There are all these risk factors. And again, what it comes down to is, if as a college administrator, president, athletic director, coach, what are you liable for and what are you not? Again, yeah, it's absolutely true that some of these kids might be more safe playing football than not. But again, the difference is that there is still a risk. And in that case, the administrators are liable for that risk, as of the risks that they have when they're at home are things that they are not liable for. That is the difference. That tells the tale. But there is a good chance. I mean, the people that are making the argument that they are more safe playing football than not have a great case, because again, they're testing a lot. You're seeing the numbers in these tests. They're being public about it. They're being disciplined when it comes to the quarantines, more so than you could do at your house. Basically, there are health officials that do that. Then they test again and decide when you're allowed back. Now, they're allowed to stay on campus and keep working out, so they're allowed to continue that structure. But all the same, you're going through that structure and just being grossly frustrated as an athlete by the fact that you're doing this, maybe still working out, maybe even still practicing to some extent. Who knows how people are going to handle this, and not getting to play, and not getting a season, and in some cases, being done with college football, because certainly a lot of these guys that have pro aspirations are not going to play a spring football season because it doesn't make any sense to them. And then there's the whole discussion of a spring football season, of how unhealthy that could be, especially if you then attempt to try to turn around it again in the fall. Is that safe? I mean, there's no safe option. That's why I really felt bad for Kevin Warren yesterday, because he's a guy that really cares about, the mental and physical wellness of athletes. He does sincerely care about that. There's no good answer for his idea. In this case, for somebody who does care about it on all levels, there's no good answer, because any decision you make is dangerous on some level.
Yeah, and then you look at, you mentioned him just coming in, Scott Dolson coming into Indiana, just coming onto the job, and these are the things that you're welcomed by, things that are a generational type problems, and to get hit in the face with that when you first walk in the door, Can't think of a worse way to start a job situation, because he's going to have some serious, Scott Dolson I'm talking about, all of them will, but some serious decisions are going to come up, because when we come back, we'll talk about the financial implications of this for schools. Indiana has been able and fortunate. They have not had to let coaches go. They've not had to cut any sports programs. This changes things. This is a game changer. I don't know how long that they can go on. We'll talk about that. Zach Osterman is going to join us later in the show.
Wonderful.
And then Nebraska, are they going to give in? We'll talk about them next too. Nebraska's not happy about not playing football. This is a proud football program. They've got they've been selling out since the 60s, I think. When we were there, they got to sign up 378 consecutive or whatever it is. They're not giving up yet, so we'll talk about that as well. You're listening to Indiana Sports Beat. Coming to you from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios, and we're back with more right after this.
Roll my windows down and cruise.
Hello, everybody. Jim Coyle from Indiana Sports Beat. When I'm not covering the Hoosiers, you can find me at Bubba's 33 in Clarksville, located on the northeast corner of I-65 at Veterans Parkway. Bubba's 33 has hand-tossed pizzas, bold burgers, and ice-cold beer from a select list of local craft brewers. An incredible food selection, all made fresh daily. Whether you're meeting the team for that post-win meal in the family dining area or meeting friends for happy hour to watch the game on one of Bubba's 50 TVs. Bubba's 33 in Clarksville. Pizza, burgers, beer.
We all want a winning smile for those championship photos, and that's exactly what you will get at Reynolds Family Dentistry in Sellersburg. Reynolds Family Dentistry has been serving the dental needs of Hoosier families for over 30 years. Let Doctors Roger and Jay Reynolds take care of your family. Just off of I-65 at 809 South Indiana Avenue in Sellersburg. Call 812-246-3368. That's Reynolds Family Dentistry, 812-246-3368.
Now that warm weather has arrived, it's time to hit the links, and there's no better place than the Golf Club at Eagle Point in Bloomington. Voted best golf course by the readers of the Bloomington Herald-Times, the Golf Club at Eagle Point is under new ownership, has new fairways and bunkers, and it's open to the public. When the round's over, there's cold beer and a full menu at the Eagle Point Pub and Bistro. Call 812-824-1100 to make it tee time. That's 812-824-1100. The Golf Club at Eagle Point in Bloomington. This is Jim Coyle from Indiana Sports Beat with Coyle and Leary. Indiana Sports Beat is now a part of the Rivals Network. You can go to thehoosier.com to sign up. It's free. Catch the show there each day live or at your convenience. You can also like or follow us on Facebook, follow the show's rebroadcast anywhere you podcast. If we're not on a radio station where you live, we should be. Let your local station know they need to carry Indiana Sports Beat with Coyle and Leary, or simply go to thehoosier.com.
Some of the best sounds you'll ever hear are generic, safe, effective, even money-saving, just like FDA-approved generic drugs. Even if they don't come in the exact same color or shape as their brand name equivalents, they have the same key ingredients and go through a rigorous review process. Talk to your doctor or pharmacist today and visit fda.gov/generic drugs. Generics are safe, effective, and can save you money. You'll like the sound of that.
This is former Indiana basketball player Brian Evans, and you're listening to Indiana Sports Beat with Jim Coyle.
Welcome back to Indiana Sports Beat, coming to you from the Golf Club Eagle Point Studios on this Wednesday, August 12th. Dustin DePierre co-hosting today. Appreciate him joining us. Talking, of course, about the postponement, I guess I should say, of Big Ten fall sports, including football. But actually, it's the cancellation, because there's been a mention, Dustin, about the possibility of playing in spring. But when we were on a Zoom call with Tom Allen the other day, that question came up, and you could tell he was like, he doesn't see it. And I saw who was Urban Meyer was asked, and he said zero chance. He just cut to the chase. Zero chance of it happening. And it's just something about having the players play twice in one calendar season for football is just almost impossible.
Yeah, no, that's number one, is saying, okay, like how are you going to even try to turn this around in the fall? Do you move it back? I mean, like, you still got, it's weird enough that who knows when they're going to try to do like an NBA season, as this is like trying to do football again with college kids and saying like how much it takes out of them, trying to go from spring, and then try to turn it around and do it again in the fall just to try to get back on, a regular schedule sounds crazy. And also, as difficult as it would be to do it anywhere, I mean, the schools that are still playing are in the fall are the ones that could do a spring season. You can play, you can conceivably play spring football in the Southeast. What are you going to do? When can you start playing football in Minneapolis with an outdoor stadium? I mean, did they have to take over U.S. Bank for that? Where do you put Wisconsin? There's piles of snow on the floor on the ground for how long? And when do you practice? I mean, like, obviously they've got indoor facilities, but it's just like the weather issue in the Big Ten footprint is wild. I mean, it's conceivable. Like, you forget Indiana is the southernmost school. And it seems wild to try to do it in Indiana, but it's the southernmost school in the conference. Everyone else is going to be crazy. I mean, I don't know when you play these games, when you try to squeeze them in. They're talking about maybe a 6 to 8 game season, but again, you have a practice season that you got to deal with first. What does that? What does this even look like? And it's just wild to consider. And again, like I said, the biggest thing is, you're going to have to try to ramp this thing up. Who knows when you start practice. And then again, you give them some time off, and then they've got to go, try to play it again in the fall, because you can't live, this way. You can't keep spring football as a thing. So, ultimately it's sort of impossible to imagine that you don't lose a season. Maybe if you play spring ball, how you play, again, how do you play in the fall? At some point, you're going to have to pay the piper for that. I don't see it being physically able to play 2 full real seasons in one calendar year.
Other conferences, the ACC, the SEC, the Big 12, as of right now, they are going forward. Nebraska would like to be part of that. They're not happy with their Big Ten brethren about not playing. We talked about that earlier. A very, very proud place. They've sold out since the 60s. They take their football serious down there. It is it's a big time thing. And I understand they're out in the middle of the country. They've probably been least affected by this. They've probably been doing the right thing. They've probably been social distancing, and they're like, wait a minute, why do we get punished? We're fine. And I get it. But Scott Frost also, there's a little pressure on him. I would think that he would take this opportunity to stretch things out and get things where he really wants him to be. But he seems really willing and wanting to play, which I know all the coaches wanted to play. But I can't see Nebraska going rogue here, because at the end of the day, there's way, way too much money they would lose if they were to leave the Big Ten with the Big Ten Network money that is provided now.
Yeah, I mean, you would have to. It's going to come down to money. I mean, they would have to decide that somehow that the idea of losing a season, that the money that you're getting from the Big Ten Network and from the Big Ten doesn't counteract it enough. That there's a chance, and the Big 12 would have to obviously, sweeten the deal and also be able to pay to buy them out of whatever contractual obligations, whatever legal obligations they have to the Big Ten, all of which, I mean, I don't know off the top of my head, just what's all written in the language and everything like that. I imagine there would be just a massive penalty if Nebraska were to decide this year, right now, between now and September, to leave. It just doesn't seem practical or feasible. But they obviously want out, and I wouldn't be surprised, or they want to play, and the Big Ten is going to have to work hard to keep them for the future. I would say. I mean, this is going to require some reparation of ties. I think. It doesn't make sense for me that they would jump right now. I just cannot see it making financial sense to throw away the amount of money that you get from the Big Ten. The idea that would be evened out somehow, I can't imagine. But all the same, I think Nebraska feels, I don't know, slighted, not listened to, not considered in some way in this. So it seems like there's going to have to be some ability for the Big Ten to reconnect with Nebraska and make it feel better, for lack of a better way of putting it.
Yeah, they're upset. They don't get to play Indiana enough.
That's the problem. That's why Nebraska wants out, is they're getting beat by Indiana. So
it's like, it's not a good look.
Exactly. It's like they didn't come to the Big Ten to get beat by Indiana. So
on the other side of the court, basketball, a little bit of news. Bruiser Flynn, of course, leaving for Kentucky. Not a big surprise, and this is not a big hit.
It's significant though. I mean, you knew it was, obviously it moved fast for a reason. I mean, the fact that it moved that quick tells you that from the beginning, because Calipari and the Miller family go way back. Though they're from my neck of the woods. I mean, they're
and Bruiser too.
What's that? Yeah, yeah. So Bruiser recruited Arch way back when. But basically, he knew him through Cal, I think, and everything. And Cal was, Johnny Miller, Archie's dad's a huge deal out there. So, I mean, I think Calipari probably went to his camps. They've known each other forever. So, I mean, I'm sure when Bruiser got the job, Cal probably told him, look, there might come a time when I call Bruiser, and then when I call Bruiser, he's just going to come. So that's just understand, when I have an opening, I don't have an opening. It's Bruiser. So that I'm sure wasn't a surprise to Archie at all. The second Kenny Payne got a job, that was your ball game. But it is a thing because, again, like, obviously they're going to have to hire a minority coach. You're not going to have an all white staff. You're just not. And they're losing a guy who is a valuable head coach. He's a guy who has won at a couple of different levels. Obviously, got fired at both of those jobs, but won before he did, especially at Drexel. Basically for a long time, he was running a pretty solid program, got a couple hits towards the end, but he knows what it's like, to run a program. And he's really well connected to the guys. He doesn't BS them. I don't know. I mean, like, I've known Bruiser for a long time, so I've he's been my sort of best source, since I've been back on the beat. So, obviously I'm just talking from a personal, like professional loss. Not that I'm not on the beat right now, but when I get back on it at some point, hopefully, it's a loss for me just to be is the coverage. But I think just for the guys, he's a guy that really connects well, and they're going to have to find somebody else who does. And it's going to be hard to find that, and a guy who also has head coaching experience that can sort of, help coach Archie, help bring Archie along and give him kind of a sounding board. So it is a significant loss. I mean, he's a guy that a lot of people know, has a lot of connections back east. When they're recruiting out there, obviously they've done better in the state of Indiana than they've done out there, but he's obviously a guy that is connected. So you're looking for a guy that's got a lot of those same attributes. Is he going to be the same guy? Is he going to be at the same level? Who knows? But Bruiser Flynn is not a guy that you easily replace. And if we imagine that there's going to be a basketball season that starts in November, you still have to have a quick turnaround on this.
And with the fact that we talk about there's a financial hit to all of this, I'm thinking that replacing him is going to be a slow process. With recruiting is kind of in place. They're deep in on the guys that they're after, and not much is going to change that at this point. So there's nothing that requires this hire happen anytime unless the guy is available and you want him. But other than that, this is something I can see them letting sit open for a while.
I don't know about too long. Yeah, I don't know about too long. Yeah, I mean, the recruiting piece is important. I don't know. I mean, I would be surprised if you get to October and they don't have a guy. I would say that. I don't know if it gets done. I'm sure it doesn't get done immediately. You got to take your time a little bit. And again, you're leaving open for the possibility that there won't be a season, or there won't be a season that starts on time. So I think that slows down your process a little bit. And like you said, you're not getting on the road. You're doing most of your recruiting by Zoom calls and by phone. But I think I don't think it's one that you wait too long on. I don't think you keep your staff open too long for that. Yeah, I would say if I had to hit a target date, I'd say by September 15th they'll have somebody.
And then the next big question, because it is invariably comes up anytime there's an opening at Indiana, is the demand by the section of fans. And, you got to get an Indiana guy. You got to get an Indiana guy, which I think that ship for most people has sailed, but you still always have that group. And that's just, if that works out, great. We talked yesterday. Todd suggested, hey, let me throw out the name Calbert Cheney. Well, of course, a great name. Of course, Indiana connection. Not just that. He's Todd mentioned NBA experience, huge for that. Right. And I think today that's the thing, man. You've got to have that NBA connection because that's where the elite players. That's what's on their mind.
Yeah. I mean, and I guess that's interesting. I guess if it does Todd know that Cal wants back? I mean, Cal was on the staff not too long ago. I don't know how good or bad that experience was for him. It would certainly be different this time around. Does he want to do it? And does he want to do it as a full-time assistant? That's really the thing too, is that, I think last time he was director of ops. There's some things you don't have to do as director of ops. You get to be a part of it. You don't have the, extensive, you participate in recruiting, but you don't have to go on the road. And if I'm trying to remember when we interviewed him, if he maybe specifically didn't want that. I'm trying to recall. I could be wrong. I'm not sure.
I don't see him coming back. I think he's going down a path for professional coaching, and I think that's where he wants to be. It's where he is currently coaching in the G League. So, but I can't predict what anybody's going to do. So you never know.
No one knows the right call is. And yeah, for that matter, like there's a better chance of a G League bubble being pulled off than there is in college basketball. So, I mean, I can't see anybody who has a job in professional basketball wanting to get into college ball right now. I cannot see that. That doesn't, you would really have to have a great job. And you've had a couple occasions. I mean, you've had two women assistants that were working in the NBA, Kara Lawson and Neil Ivey, that stepped into college basketball to take head coaching jobs. But they were working in the NBA, and I think that that makes sense because you're running your own program. It's probably a pay raise. You got to believe it's going to come back at some point. But I can't see going from being an NBA or even a G League assistant to being a college assistant right now. You can't feel confident in where things are going with the college game and the likelihood of being able to pull something off where you are certain about the NBA that there's, if they did this bubble, they can do another one. So I would be surprised if anybody does that. But, I mean, there are guys out there. I mean, I'm trying to think of who all is still doing it. I mean, I know A.J. Guyton's wanted to do it forever. He's a guy that's not shy about pushing that he wants a job. I'm trying to think of other guys who are in the business who would be good fits. I'm sure I'm sure there's people.
A.J. Moye.
Yeah.
He's out on the West Coast. I know he has showed interest in that.
Yeah.
I think potentially Greg Graham, who's
Graham,
up in the Northeast right now.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, there's a handful of them out there, but there's just absolutely, it's just not necessary. You look what Archie Miller is doing. Archie Miller is ask Hoosier fans, do you think he's recruiting the state of Indiana successfully? I'd say most of them are saying yes. He had zero connection to this state when he got here. So it's just not it's just not an issue today. Kids don't care.
Exactly. I mean, it's good to have a guy on staff who has an Indiana connection, and they have Mike Roberts. So as long as you've got one, as far as the assistants are concerned, you're in good shape. And as long as you take it seriously as a head coach, and Archie Miller is obviously taking it seriously as a head coach, he's building relationships. He's getting guys, he's turning one player into the next player and the next player by saying, by making it cool to go back to Indiana. So from Langford to Jackson Davis to Lander, you have that sort of handoff going with a whole bunch of guys in between, the Leals, the Galloways. He is in good shape. It does help to have somebody there that is an alum, can speak to what it means to be an Indiana basketball player, can speak to just the soul of the place. And Mike Roberts is that guy. So you can go get an alum for this job, but you can go and not get an alum for this job. There's a bunch of options, and I'm sure he's got a lot of guys that he's been connected to over years that he's considering, and that Sean would know, and that Cal would know, and there's a long list of guys that are going to be options here that I'm sure he'll be interested in bringing on.
You mentioned something about the G League that reminds me, this year we had all the guys come back for college basketball, which was like, oh my gosh, you talk about getting excited because the Big Ten is like a G League team right now, or a G League itself. But if this happens again, and God forbid that college basketball is postponed or canceled or whatever, now you're going to see a mass exodus the other way. And then you talk about the G League could have a successful bubble. They could literally leave school, half of these guys, and go to the G League and start playing. And I think that is a distinct possibility that we could see.
Sure, it is. Yeah, if you get to November and you can't promise there will be a season, I mean, and the question is just, what does the NBA have to do to process and digest all of that talent that is going to want to come out? And it's just a question of just how many guys, because that's got to be a huge number. I mean, they'll probably have to get a second league. I mean, like, I don't even know how you do it. I mean, because I think there's going to be so many guys that are going to want to bail that are just going to say, like, this isn't, how much longer can I do this? I don't know. You can't even guess what kind of decisions. If you get to November and you say, it's one thing if they get to November and say, okay, we're going to do this thing in January. It's another thing if you get to November and you say, guys, I don't think we can do it. I don't think there's a path. Then there's going to be most of the league, because it's like, okay, well, what's, is it going to get better in a year? What do you have to stick around for? Where do you got to go to play? And I think that's the thing, is a lot of kids will want to come out. And there's going to be a lot of opportunities. And the question is, are they going to be able to go to Europe at that point?
All coming down to a question.
Are they going to take us by that point?
I think it takes us. Zach Osterman's going to join us next. We'll continue the discussion. Is all the unknowing. We don't know what's going to happen, but we keep talking about it every day. And Dustin DePirk is with us now. Zach Osterman is going to join us here a little bit. We'll be back. You're listening to Indiana Sports Beat, coming to you from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios. Back right after this.
Tripping in the world could be dangerous. Everybody circling as vultures. Negative, nepotist. Everybody waiting for the fall of man. Everybody praying for the end of times. Everybody hoping they could be the one. I was born to run.
Hello, everybody. Jim Coyle from Indiana Sports Beat. When I'm not covering the Hoosiers, you can find me at Bubba's 33 in Clarksville, located on the northeast corner of I-65 at Veterans Parkway. Bubba's 33 has hand-tossed pizzas, bold burgers, and ice-cold beer from a select list of local craft brewers. An incredible food selection, all made fresh daily. Whether you're meeting the team for that post-win meal in the family dining area or meeting friends for happy hour to watch the game on one of Bubba's 50 TVs. Bubba's 33 in Clarksville. Pizza, burgers, beer.
We all want a winning smile for those championship photos, and that's exactly what you will get at Reynolds Family Dentistry in Sellersburg. Reynolds Family Dentistry has been serving the dental needs of Hoosier families for over 30 years. Let Doctors Roger and Jay Reynolds take care of your family. Just off of I-65 at 809 South Indiana Avenue in Sellersburg. Call 812-246-3368. That's Reynolds Family Dentistry, 812-246-3368.
Now that warm weather has arrived, it's time to hit the links, and there's no better place than the golf club at Eagle Point in Bloomington. Voted best golf course by the readers of the Bloomington Herald-Times, the golf club at Eagle Point is under new ownership, has new fairways and bunkers, and it's open to the public. When the round's over, there's cold beer and a full menu at the Eagle Point Pub and Bistro. Call 812-824-1100 to make a tee time. That's 812-824-1100. The golf club at Eagle Point in Bloomington. This is Jim Coyle from Indiana Sports Beat with Coyle and Leary. Indiana Sports Beat is now a part of the Rivals Network. You can go to thehoosier.com to sign up. It's free. Catch the show there each day live or at your convenience. You can also like or follow us on Facebook, follow the show's rebroadcast anywhere you podcast. If we're not on a radio station where you live, we should be. Let your local station know they need to carry Indiana Sports Beat with Coyle and Leary, or simply go to thehoosier.com.
Some of the best sounds you'll ever hear are generic, safe, effective, even money-saving, just like FDA-approved generic drugs. Even if they don't come in the exact same color or shape as their brand name equivalents, they have the same key ingredients and go through a rigorous review process. Talk to your doctor or pharmacist today and visit fda.gov/generic drugs. Generics are safe, effective, and can save you money. You'll like the sound of that.
Hey, this is Jordan Halls, former Indiana Hoosier. Keep up with Indiana sports on Indiana Sports Beat.
Today's guest is brought to you by Reynolds Family Dentistry of Sellersburg. You need $1 million smile for those championship photos, and that's exactly what you'll get with Reynolds Family Dentistry.
Cheat, I'll beg and bribe to make you well, to make you well. When enemies are
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat, coming to you on this Wednesday from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios. Joined now by Zach Osterman from the Indianapolis Star, who has also, I'm sure, been a very busy man the last few days, as we all have. Zach, thanks a lot for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me, Jim.
Dustin DePirick is on with us as well, Zach. We've been talking about, obviously, the loss of fall sports for the Big Ten, of course, football, the main entree there. Bloomington, we were just talking about how Bloomington, the city, is going to be affected. Dustin was talking about going to Penn State and Ann Arbor, all these towns that are so reliant on these financial windfalls. They're just simply not going to be there.
Yeah, listen, I think to some extent those businesses were still facing this either way, because I think we all kind of understood that that football would not be a fan event, if that makes sense, at least certainly not a substantial fan event if it was held this fall. And, if anything, I don't see a lot of silver linings this morning, but if anything, I think you could maybe hope, if you're a local businessman or woman in Bloomington, that it could be more of a fan event if they could make it happen in the spring at some point. But it's still, it kind of speaks to a really more fundamental issue, which is that we've used this word or this term recession-proof to describe college towns for a very long time, because college towns, whatever sort of wider economic forces were at work in the country, college towns always had a captive audience, always had a sort of an anchor employer, if you want to call it that, and therefore could generally count on a thriving economy in terms of the money people were making, therefore the money that was going back into local business, the money that was going back into, the hospitality industry, certainly the money that was going into property taxes and things like that. And I don't think it's a mistake that Bloomington North and Bloomington South are two very, very good high schools, Edgewood as well, but I'm obviously thinking in particular about the city of Bloomington here. And it's not like, that I don't think the world is going to melt, but this is another way in which that we're seeing college towns kind of moved into the crosshairs of this sort of thing in a way that, frankly, they haven't been at times in the past.
Dustin, you talked about your experiences in Happy Valley.
Yeah, no, I can't imagine what they're going through right now, as much as Bloomington's going through. State College probably has it worse. But no, Zach, I think you talked about just the idea of looking at this from a bigger, even more 10,000-foot view. I thought you did a good job of that the other day with your piece about what this says about, like, how this kind of shows everything that was sort of wrong in college football in the first place. All of this is really being highlighted by having to go through this, just the decentralized power. So I just want to ask you a little bit more about that, basically. I mean, how have you seen this week basically, bring all of those issues to light?
Yeah, college athletics has accepted this. I mean, listen, we've been talking for a long time about the potential sort of schism between the Power Five and the rest of the NCAA, frankly. I mean, obviously the Power Five and the Group of Five, but also the Power Five and the FCS, to an increasing extent, just the Power Five and the rest of college athletics. And the NCAA always has been and always will be, at least in its current vestige, an organization that exists and operates at the will of its member schools. So it's not like there was a time when the NCAA ruled over college athletics with an iron fist and terrorized all the schools and conferences. This is all, this has always been the arrangement. But as the money started to really pile up, starting probably around 2006, 2007, the Big Ten Network launches in fall 2007. The Power Five schools started to look around and say, well, we're the ones making all the money. We're increasingly basically playing a different game here because we're making so much money. We can offer our athletes something different. We want to, we can increase the scope of our sports, the size of our stage. Just frankly, the amount of money we're spending on everything from facilities to student athlete welfare to staff salaries and on, we're kind of tired of having to play by some of the same rules as everybody else. And when they wanted to, they pulled away. I mean, I can even remember as far back as the summer of 2007, the NCAA was not exactly thrilled about the idea of conference-only television networks, maybe in part for this reason. Because they saw that it had the capacity to consolidate power within the conferences. The NCAA was not at all thrilled about realignment. The Power Five went on anyway. The NCAA, I don't think the NCAA was necessarily fighting it super hard by this point, but, the NCAA was basically forced by vote to give over autonomy to the Power Five in 2014. When it has suited the Power Five schools to decentralize this power and effectively act as this sort of oligarchy of major conferences that will sort of give way to the NCAA on certain things while almost ignoring them in favor of a very sort of loose confederation of decision makers on others. It suited them because it made everybody money. Because at the end of the day, whatever the NCAA thought about realignment, Maryland, Rutgers, and Nebraska made the Big Ten a bunch of money. But this is where the bill comes due, because right now, and not even just right now, I would say, quite frankly, for the last 4 to 5 months at least, this sport has needed centralized decision making. It has needed one clear and present voice at the top end of the food chain through whom everything flows. This person that is basically a nerve center for everything that needed dealt with here, to such an extent that, for example, you wouldn't have seen a bunch of schools coming out with their own testing protocols and plans. There would have just been one broad-based, expert-informed testing plan that was given to everyone from the very beginning, so we wouldn't have this weird hodgepodge of different ideas and different approaches and different sort of testing mechanisms. Well, we kind of destroyed the apparatus by which that person would ever have been allowed to exist in the current college model. And I don't know exactly, fixing that, untying that knot is going to take a long time. It's going to probably involve some drastic measures. But college athletics needs to have kind of a long think about where it wants to go next, because this has been a really bad 4 or 5 months.
Yeah, we've heard for a long time, Zach, talk of the Power Five just basically forming their own, quote unquote, just separating from the NCAA. This may be the final straw for that to happen. I don't know if that does happen or not, because there's a lot of logistical implications with money and all that, but this may be the final straw for that.
I mean, I actually sort of had wondered at one time, and again, maybe this comes down to the fact that nobody can get on the same page with anybody else right now. I mean, when people sort of cried out for a bubble in college athletics, and when people would ask me, how that could work, I would say, well, the central issue you've got is amateurism. You can't stick kids in a bubble and then claim that you're still treating them like any other normal student, and therefore they should not be compensated any different from any other normal student, because at that point even a bad lawyer would not need very long to make a convincing argument that you have essentially destroyed one of the central principles of amateurism. So what if they're not? What if the Power Five just wanted to do away with amateurism? That's kind of, I think, one of the bigger questions that I've been asking, and I'm not advocating for it, but it obviously hasn't happened at this point, and we're at a point now where that structure, among others, let's be clear, it's not the only one, but that structure, among others, has now cost two conferences what is effectively, in many ways, almost $1 billion football season. You wouldn't blame decision, or at least you wouldn't be surprised. I don't want to say you wouldn't blame, but you wouldn't be surprised if there are decision makers in and around the Big Ten and Pac-12 right now that are thinking, frankly, is there a better way forward? Now, I think what's going to be interesting is if the other three Power Five conferences all eventually come to the same conclusion about football. Obviously, for the moment, they're pressing forward. But if you can get unanimity between those five, and they're all looking around and they're saying we are literally losing billions of dollars that maybe we would not have to lose if it were not for this construct, that's when, I think we could be talking about that. And I've said this every time I've talked about this. Listen, the reason we're here is COVID-19. If this virus did not exist, none of this would be happening. So let's not. College football didn't do this to itself in the sense that college athletics didn't cancel themselves, didn't shut themselves down. But the virus, as crises often do, exposed some very real stresses and flaws, frankly, in the system that if we don't get them worked out, just to be honest, people are going to lose a ton of money, and people are going to start losing their jobs pretty soon, unfortunately. And that's the real world sort of implication of this.
Yeah, you've already seen a lot of athletic departments have started to trim. You start to see sports information departments start to get cut. Obviously, it's going to be, you're not going to be able to create sort of professional system within college sports between now and November. What do you think is doable for college basketball? What is obtainable between now and then? Obviously, if we're presuming that there's not going to be a vaccine, what do you think college football can learn from what happened to college football? College basketball can learn from what happened to college football. And is there any way to fix this that is legitimately feasible in the time that you're talking about?
I mean, I think it's going to be very difficult. I think there are ways in which basketball is different. I think one of the primary ones is that you can potentially, as you see a lot of schools sort of talking about not bringing students back on campus until maybe February of next year for the spring semester. I know Indiana's doing that. I think some others are as well. Maybe you don't build a true bubble, but it's almost a de facto bubble because there's no students in town. And so you can be very sort of judicious with your players about keeping everyone contained, keeping everything contained as much as possible. I know that I know people have floated the idea of, sort of centralized bubbles for Big Ten games in some of the bigger Big Ten cities. Quietly, I've actually heard that there are conferences. I've not heard the Big Ten's exploring it. I've heard there are conferences that are exploring that possibility, or something that looks like it, like pods, or just something that allows them basically to come together, sequester everybody, play a bunch of games in a short period of time, and at least kind of get through the season in chunks. But you are still going to run into some of the same concerns. I would be very surprised at this point if we see a non-conference season. I know the Pac-12 already canceled basically its non-conference season. The Big Ten didn't move as far as to cancel all sports through the end of the calendar year 2020 yesterday, but you wouldn't be surprised if that's, kind of on the horizon. I think that, stuff like the Maui Invitational is, in all likelihood off the table for this year, unfortunately, but that's sort of a best case scenario. I think what seems to have kind of the most juice right now is some sort of conference-only season beginning early next year, leading into possibly a delayed NCAA tournament that would allow things to maybe be a little bit more closed off in their structure, and then potentially bridge us to a point where we do have a vaccine or better therapies, things like that in the spring, that would make all of this a little more viable.
We can all go to Russia. Here they've got a vaccine. Not trust that one.
Trust in that.
Yeah, I'm kidding. Absolutely kidding. Zach, I cannot thank you enough for taking time out. I know you're busy to join us. We really appreciate it as always, man. And we'll just keep plodding along.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much all we can do at this point. One foot in front of the other. Thanks for having me, Phil. Thank
you. Zach Osterman, the Indianapolis Star. Make sure you follow him. Great content there covering Indiana Hoosiers in the Big Ten. Appreciate him. Dustin, next we talk about, he was talking about the potential cuts and all this. And, IU has done a great job of not having to do that. But I wouldn't be surprised if over the next few months we see something, smaller sports or coaches. I mean, there's a lot of payroll just sitting there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, and they have done well so far. I mean, I don't know what all they've had to do, but it's just, again, you base a budget on the idea that you're going to have this much revenue, and when it starts to go away, it's like, okay, well, what do you have to do on the expense side to even it up? And at a certain point in time, there's a salary that needs to come off the books. That's just how it goes. So it's a question of when, obviously you're going to be looking at, you got to imagine they're looking at sports. Now, I don't think, for one thing, Indiana's not overextended. I don't think when it comes to sports, there are some schools that already just simply had too many to start with. I mean, obviously Stanford had a huge number of them, and that was a big wake-up call to see Stanford have to cut sports. But you got to imagine that there are going to be, some cuts. People are going to have to look at ways. I know you've already seen some sports information departments take a hit, which is tough. I mean, like no one really appreciates that like other media guys in understanding, okay, what all they do to make sure that, we get right stories and get the message out and get updated stats and, data and information, everything it takes just to take score for a game is a project every day. And they're starting to, Vanderbilt moved its thing into, the overall communications office. And I'm sure that there are not people in the communications office that know how to, run stat, whatever it is for a football game. I mean, so all of this is gonna be tough, and some people that have been really working hard and doing a good job at their jobs are going to be, are going to be unemployed, and it's going to be tough to get some of those things back. I mean, and I think everyone sort of hopes that eventually this all gets rolling again and all that money comes back. Don't know if it'll exactly work that way.
It never comes back. I was thinking of things. I'm like, wow, there are going to be things that just don't ever come back because once people figure out they can do without it,
Sure.
they will. They'll cut it.
Absolutely.
Media meals. I was thinking, that's the first thing I thought of. I'm like, we're never getting fed again, man. We're never.
No, exactly. We're all going to have to go down the concession stand and buy cheeseburgers. That's for sure.
I hope we get to go to a game again. It was just crazy, but.
Same, exactly. I just getting to that step, I think, is going to go. You're just really just hoping for that at some point soon.
Another great day. Appreciate Dustin for sitting in with us as always. It makes the hour go by so fast. Cannot thank Zach Osterman enough for joining us as well. We'll be back tomorrow to do it all again. There's plenty to talk about for the moment, at least. Plenty to talk about. Not having something to talk about is weird, but we'll see what the ACC is going to do. The SEC, the Big 12, they're still going right now. How does that play out? National championship implications. There's so much to talk about, but we'll get to it. We thank everybody. I hope you go out and have a great day. Wear your mask. Do something nice for somebody. And again, thanks to everybody. And until tomorrow, I'm Jim Coyle. I will see you on the radio.